What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Freedom to Flourish podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Dr. Tim Augustiniak, here with my good friend and colleague, Dr. Joel Miller. And today is a huge, huge episode. It is episode 100.
Yee.
We finally made it. Finally made it. I know episode 99 was what, 3-4 weeks ago now that we released it. It's it's been probably the longest break that we've had since we started the podcast. However, we wanted to make sure that we took the time to really think about what we were going to talk about on this podcast, since it's not going to be a traditional just educational episode, but also at the same time, it's the holidays. We've been going at it really hard for the last 2 years. And we just wanted a little bit of a break. It just ended up being, oh yeah, let's do next week. Let's do next week. Let's do next week. And finally, here we are. And it's episode 100. And we're nice and refreshed after the new year, or I think about as refreshed as we can get. And we're just ready to hit the ground running again. So, Dr. Joel, how are you doing this morning?
Good morning, man. I'm so thankful to be here. This is really a powerful kind of episode for us to kind of reflect on things, just kind of express gratitude, but then also talk about, the things of the future that we're kind of aspiring for and we're pushing for and we're working hard for with this podcast and how it can help people. Obviously, we hear from patients all the time how they listen to episodes. A lot of people listen to them before they schedule, which is great. I mean, if we can produce episodes, spending a little bit of time each week, and it helps people just have a better idea of kind of what's going on with their health, a better hope, then it's so worth it. And so obviously we have a lot of gratitude there. But man, this last month or so over the holidays was really nice to just kind of get a little bit more rest with things. And I know we've been traveling, seeing family and all that good stuff. And we're super thankful for that. But I was just thinking as you were saying that, it's very easy for me to tell patients, hey, you need more rest. Hey, you need to do this. You need to do that. It's harder sometimes to follow myself. And one of my pet peeves with specifically holistic practitioners, and I say holistic practitioners because holistic practitioners, we generally know how the body functions and we know how to help people get to the bottom of their health issues. We know how to live an optimal life and have optimal health. But, compared to like mainstream allopathic medical professionals, usually they're just trained in medicine, they're trained in disease rather than health and optimal health. And so with the holistic practitioners, one of my pet peeves is a lot of practitioners you see don't really follow what they teach. And so where you have holistic practitioners knowing how to heal the gut, knowing how to be healthy, have healthy hormones, one of my pet peeves is you see holistic practitioners that might be overweight, that might have a number of different health issues. And I totally understand that we're all on our own kind of journey, even holistic practitioners. You and I, we don't necessarily have great health, but the disconnect that gets me sometimes is where practitioners might say one thing or teach one thing, but maybe they're not doing it themselves. And so all that to say, we were able to take a step back, get a little bit more rest, and I'm super thankful for that. I feel more rejuvenated. I know we've been talking the last few days about future of this podcast and what that looks like, and we're pumped, we're motivated, we're excited. It helps that we're young and that kind of thing, but I'm excited.
Yeah, I feel like that might have been a personal attack. Can we just clarify and let me know
On
that
you?
wasn't necessarily directed towards me?
That wasn't directed towards you, Dr. Tim. I love you.
I'm just kidding.
Now, should you from our outside conversation, should you probably work out a little bit more? Probably, but me too. I'm in that boat too. I literally every month goes by, I'm like, why do I have a gym membership? And it's crazy to me. And but there's a number of things. We work so hard for patients, and we love to do that. We love to help people. I think we've talked about this in other episodes, but one of the most exciting things that we get to see is literally people like healing, people getting rid of their different conditions and finding hope in this crazy thing called health. And we love to do that. And every once in a while it feels like work, but we really enjoy it.
Yeah. And honestly, one thing that you said there, just in the first couple minutes, you used the words gratitude maybe grateful, and then also thankfulness. And so kind of the goal with this episode is kind of expressing the thankfulness that we have for our listeners, our patients, but then also thankfulness that we were able to keep motivation going and just produce all the way up until episode 100 of this podcast. I mean,
For
that's
real.
huge.
100%.
Everybody that I've told about it, they're like, episode 100? That's just
Dude,
insane.
come on,
And to
Dr. Tim.
think, over 2 years ago, if we had said, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do 100 episodes in just over 2 years of this podcast," we probably would have been like, I don't know if we're gonna get there. I mean, it
Dang.
just feels awkward right now. I don't know if you
Yeah.
remember, but way back when we first started,
Yeah.
that first episode,
Yeah.
before we actually clicked the record button, I
Yeah.
was like, I gotta scratch every part of my face, my head, and just make sure that like I'm not gonna itch and I'm not gonna touch my face, and I have to act all just normal and not be my true self in front of the camera. But now it's really it's second nature. Both of us,
Yeah.
we just I'll have patients that are in the office and they're like, "You're talking about so much stuff. Can I take notes? Can I take a video? Can I just record your voice? Like I won't, do any actual video." And I'm like, "Hey, I wore my makeup today. I'm good to go.
Oh
We
my
can do it."
word.
But it just becomes so easy as time goes on. And one thing that, we've got all kinds of really good friends, really good mentors. And even if, we've got people that aren't necessarily doing the exact same things that we're doing with the podcast and with our practice, we've got these people that are trying to help motivate us to keep us going in what we're doing. And I know, our good friend, Dr. Todd Anderson, when we were talking about getting it going, he was like, guys, it does not matter if the first one's good or the second one or the third one. And honestly, they're probably going to be terrible. But if that's the case and you guys actually pull the trigger and do it, you're going to get more and more comfortable and you're going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Consistency really is key.
Yeah.
I remember back when I was up in Minnesota working for him, he had said that uh, with social media alone, people that end up succeeding in quotes, what does that mean? But people that end up actually, getting a ton of followers and reaching a ton of people, the number one predictor of success with that is if you reach 1,000 posts. It's not whether or not they're good. It's not the amount of views that you get on them. It's whether or not you reach 1,000 posts. And
Wow.
so all it says is it's a game of consistency. And
Wow.
although we haven't done every week, I would say we've been pretty consistent as a whole. And I am incredibly thankful, incredibly grateful for that because with all of the things that we have going on in our lives, I mean, since we've started, I barely moved to Arkansas when we started this podcast. You had barely moved to Dallas. We
Yep.
had just started our practices. I was getting married 6 months later. We had all kinds of, life stuff going on, visiting family. I mean, geez, I don't even know how far from your family in Virginia, but I'm from Detroit, so I'm 12 and a half hours drive from where my family's from. We are 5 hours from St. Louis, where my wife is from. And so any sort of family event, all the things, we need to travel. And so we've got travel, we've got continued education stuff we need to do, we got seminars to keep up on the things that we actually want to keep up on. And then just projects that we've been working on in our house. We got married, and when we were on our honeymoon, we put an offer in on a house. Didn't even see it.
Yeah.
My parents were watching our house, watching our cats. They went and checked it out, and they're like, this thing needs a lot of work, but it was good enough for what we wanted, and we wanted some space, and we got some land with it, which was great. But the last, year and a half since we bought it, it has been nothing but projects and projects and
Yeah.
projects and projects.
Yeah.
And so we've had that on top of it. I mean, that summer that we bought it, we had about 8 weeks from the time that we closed until we were done with our lease in our duplex that we had rented.
Wow.
And I was seeing patients all day, every day, Monday through
Yep.
Thursday. And
Yep.
then Friday through Sunday, I was pulling 12-hour days working on getting our kitchen all fixed up and ready to go.
Yep.
When we actually moved in, I had got countertops cut, but I had not finished our countertops and plumbed the sink or anything. So we were basically camping out in our own house for about a week until I was able to actually get our plumbing up and ready to go, get the dishwasher hooked up. We were doing dishes in the bathroom. It was great.
Yeah.
But the reason that I say all that stuff, we just have had so much going on in our lives outside of doing this podcast. And
Yeah.
for us to have gotten to episode 100, I'm just thankful that I was able to stick it out. I'm thankful that you were able to stick it out. I'm thankful that we were able to actually get our schedules to coordinate enough to actually continue to do this most weeks. And it's just such a great thing. I'm just so happy that things have worked out to the point where we are here today talking about this.
Yeah, Dr. Tim, I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful. I remember I remember initially when we started this, like you said, we both just moved down. When we started this, I mean, we our goal was literally just like, hey, let's start making content, let's start trying to help people get information out there, because we have a really unique perspective in our training with not only internal health and holistic health, but also the muscle testing. And what's really fascinating about that is just kind of having like a superpower to get to the bottom of things and be so accurate with that. And so we started our practices and we talked about this and we said, hey, should we do this? And then it was kind of I think we talked about it one time and then it we were kind of like, yeah, maybe. And then it was kind of like a month went by, nothing happened. And then I
Hmm.
think you might have reached out and were like, hey, are we doing this thing? And it was like, all right, let's do
Yeah.
it. So
It's like
we got to
let's
start.
do it today, like right now, or else we're not going to do it. Like
No,
just
it's
sit down
true.
and do it. Let's not
It's
think. Let's
true.
just talk about something.
It's true. And there's dopamine spikes when you talk about doing something, but not when you actually do it. That's why people love to talk about what they're going to do. Whereas I've like noticed that and I'm like, no, I'm going to go ahead and do it. And then I'll tell people what I did. And I find that that's just a better way of life. But, you know, we, you mentioned getting married about 6 months in. I'm pretty sure we went once a week on this episode every week until that point. Cause I remember we got to the point where we were like so on it and dedicated that it was like, you had your wedding and honeymoon coming up, and it was kind of like, wait a minute, we're gonna miss a week. What? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. I do.
It
We were
was
like,
like
"Oh my
what?
God." So do we pre-record it up like do 2 episodes this week so
Yeah,
that way we can schedule it?
yeah.
And then we were like, let me just enjoy this time off.
I
It's
know,
a big life event. Let's let that take
I know,
priority over the podcast for a
I
week.
know. Yeah, but talk about busyness. Dr. Tim, most patients don't know this, but when it comes to the work that we do, where our appointments are a little bit longer, our appointments are usually working with fairly complex cases. And, not that patients are flying in all the time to see us. Sometimes they do, but, a lot of our cases, like we're literally trying to get to the bottom of everything and accomplish every goal. So I know a lot of patients will go in to some holistic health clinics or functional medicine clinics, and it's like, hey, I feel like my hormones are off and I just don't feel good. And when patients come in here, they have some of the same complaints, but for us, they also like our intake forms and our overall approach is so comprehensive that we're also like, well, okay, you have back pain, you have allergies, you have migraines, like, and here's the thing, we don't shy away from any of these things, which is so exciting. And so my point is to say that the appointments that we have, yes, they're a little bit longer in time, usually being like an hour and so forth, for follow-ups, but they are so action packed. And both you and I know that after a full day, our brain is like ready for something else. Our brain is ready for some rest, ready for some food, some nutrition, and all that kind of thing. And so all that long-winded kind of explanation there to get back to the point that most patients don't realize this, but in our line of work, the standard hours worked with patients per week is around 18, maybe 19, maybe 20. And I think, obviously we push that a little bit more. But just to say, whereas we're doing more like 25 to 30, somewhere around that number every week. Number one, because we're young and we can. Number two, obviously I'm not married yet here, but you're married. But even then, no kids yet, right? So we have a little bit more time, a little bit more energy to give to things and all that stuff. And so with everything that we're doing in the office, just trying to help patients, of course, we talk to patients with consults and a lot of times telling them like, unfortunately, we have a little bit of a wait list. And the thing that I'm sure you despise, we haven't talked about this, but the thing that I despise most is being like, hey, I think I can help you with this issue you've been dealing with for months and years, but I can help you in 2 or 3 months, and so it's like
Yeah.
we're trying to get patients in, we're trying to help people. To me, if a patient needs to get in and like because they're dealing with something and it's flared up and it's frustrating, I, I've been there. I've had some different health stuff. Things suck. And so I have that compassion for people, and I know you do too. But to say that all of that in the office, I mean, easily 40, 50, some weeks, probably more early on, were 60 hours when we were just trying to get everything going. Um, and doing the podcast on top of that, I'm proud of us, and I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for your dedication and commitment, and for myself as well. So I'm super thankful for that. I'm thankful that God's kind of been able to just help us have the energy and focus and everything we need to keep going with things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really great. So let's start with when things first started. So we already kind of talked about, it was just kind of talk about, okay, so we're starting our practices. How do we get patients in the door? How do we reach more people? How do we help people? So we are, working on our website, working on ads, working on all these things. But we thought, okay, well, what are some things that can make us look like we know potentially more than we feel like we know? And so I don't know about you, but I always like to talk about, it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And if you guys are listening, and you have access to your phone or your laptop or whatever it is. If you're driving and listening, don't do this right now. Just wait till you get to your destination. But Google the Dunning-Kruger effect. And so what that is, it's a line graph of how much you know versus how much you think you know. So the graph starts at, 0, where you know nothing, and there you know nothing, and therefore you know nothing about whatever topic. And so as soon as you learn a little bit, it's like what you think you know goes through the roof, and so your confidence goes through the roof. And then once you learn a little bit more, it just tanks just below baseline, where you feel like you know just the opposite of anything, because your mind is open to the whole world of whatever topic it is that you're learning about, and you realize there's so much to know that you could never possibly know all of it. And so slowly at that point, things start to creep upward and upward again until you get to mastery. And that's when you actually know something and feel like you know something. I would argue some people probably feel like they still know more than they do, and they might be a little cocky with it. But I'll talk about this with my patients sometimes because, we've done so much training in, our DABC program, applied kinesiology seminars, and just keeping up on things. But then also, you learn in practice, and you learn from your mistakes that you make. You learn from your mistakes that your friends that do this stuff make. You learn from basically everybody else that we keep a network with, that we bounce ideas off of probably every single week. I feel like there's not a week that goes by that I don't ask somebody else that does this for work
Yeah.
what they think about whatever case. Then you add on top of that other people in this industry or in this line of work that are on social media and stuff. And so we absorb that content too, and try to learn from that and use our best judgment with our patients. But there's just so many avenues where we've learned so much that, I like to think that I'm kind of on the way back up with the Dunning-Kruger effect. But, until I've done it for probably 20, 30, 40 years, I don't think that I'll actually feel like I know everything, because there's just so much that we don't know and so much that we don't understand. But the whole point of getting the podcast going was, at the very least, getting a huge part of what we know out there for people to listen, and then start to wrap their head around what could be causing your problems. Because there's so many Instagram, Facebook, TikTok doctors out there that I think they've reached the influencer status to the point where I don't know if they see patients still, and if they do, I don't know what the quality of care is like, and if they've fallen out of practice. But I almost feel like a
Mm.
lot of them, it's like they all hop on some bandwagons with what things are trendy to talk about clinically. And a lot of the things that we'll find, a lot of people are talking about online, we end up finding contradictory things in our practice. And that's where our blending of functional medicine and applied kinesiology is so cool, because we have the lab work, lifestyle, using the systems biology approach to find the root cause of disease, training with functional medicine. But then whenever there's that clip that you look over of, what are we going to do moving forward to supplement and, fix these problems, that's where we get hands-on and start with the muscle testing stuff. And so with doing that, say there's some good research that says methylene blue, for example, is really good and it helps with all this stuff. Well, I have yet to have a single patient that methylene blue actually shows to be helpful. And I've had a lot of people that once they incorporated, it might help a little bit in one avenue, but there's like 3 or 4 other underlying organ issues that it will seriously provoke.
Yep.
It'll, disrupt the autonomic nervous system, halt detoxification, like all kinds of stuff. And it's really not great. Same goes with things like your GLP-1 inhibitors and, your tirzepatide, your Ozempic, and all this stuff. But anyway, everything has, a positive effect, or else it wouldn't give it out. But with what we do with the applied kinesiology, we can get answers real time to see if, your body is reacting negatively to something. And as in addition to that, what exact nutrients your body needs to help fix each problem. So with that being said, our clinical take on, gut health, or I don't know, autoimmunity, or whatever it is, it ends up being a little different than a lot of docs. And so we all started it with the idea of, let's try to, I guess, maybe build some more confidence in people that are providing health information online and what we see clinically, because there's a lot of people online that think just do it for the sake of making money off of it, as opposed to actually helping people. Because I mean, we have only spent money on this podcast so far. I'm sure, along the way, there's plenty of patients that have come in that are like, "Oh, I heard you on the podcast." And so, like, yeah, you can say that people have come in because of that. But for the sake of like sponsorships, ads, selling things online, we haven't done any of that stuff. The only benefit that we could possibly have is from patients coming into our office. And so it is still completely geared towards helping our patients out. And so with starting it, we just wanted to get something out there. And in the early days of it, we had no shortage of ideas, because it was, let's talk about, all the things that we talk about with our patients day one. Let's talk about blood sugar. Let's talk about, detoxification of hormones. Let's talk about the thyroid. Let's talk about the gut. Let's talk about, this and that, the gallbladder, all these things. And then I don't know what episode we probably got to that it started becoming a bit of a struggle. I'd be curious if you have any idea, but very quickly on, by very quickly, I mean within probably, by the time the first 6 months was over, we were like, how are we going to keep doing this? Not because we don't have the motivation, but because we don't know what the heck to talk about anymore. And so we had to kind of start getting creative and ask for suggestions from patients. And then there was the part of it where we had to not only talk about things that we already knew, but we had to start researching some things and looking into things more to be able to provide a good clinical talk about it. Because there's topics that we got into that we're like, man, this will be really good to keep us sharp on things, because we don't think about these things as much. So it quickly moved into that. And yeah, it's kind of still at that point, I would say. We've kind of really been on the downswing with that up until
Yeah.
the new year here, because
Yep.
we just, honestly, we've been tired. But like I said, our goal for this new year is to get back on the horse, really do a great job of providing some good quality content, maybe mixing things up a little bit, and just getting back with it so we can keep reaching people and keep things going.
Yep. Totally. I think as far as what episode it was that we started running a little bit low on ideas of topics, I think it might have been around episode 50. I can't remember because I know we had like a kind of a fun number coming up, like 50, and we were talking about Lyme episode and all that stuff. So somewhere around there. But it's funny because I look around as well as at other podcasts like Dr. Mark Hyman's, and to be honest, his titles and everything are creative and enticing and interesting, but the things that he talks about, it's all the same stuff. Anti-inflammatory, goes back to the gut health, eating whole foods, stuff like that. And so that encourages me a little bit that if Dr. Mark Hyman keeps hitting on the same things over and over and over again, because those are the important topics about health, then we shouldn't feel so bad about doing the same thing. But there's definitely a way that you can take specific topics and look at it from like different angles. And that's one of the cool things I think you see on social media is you see a lot of different practitioners or just kind of influencers that will talk about, let's say, the thyroid from a specific angle that's not kind of common, and it kind of sheds light on things. So obviously, with every topic, we're trying to shed light on it from every single angle, but sometimes there's new topics coming out that people are talking about, like the methylene blue, cold plunging, all the different things. And, just being able to share some thoughts on that, I think can be really helpful for people. Dr. Tim, let's kind of segue here based on our time into kind of like the future. So what do we kind of see for kind of the future of the Freedom to Flourish podcast. I know we talked about this a little bit off camera, but what are some things that kind of come to mind that you're looking forward to?
Continuing it.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
the short answer. No, honestly, this was probably one of the biggest points that we wanted to talk about that kept us from doing this podcast right away, I would say. So, uh, first things first, we didn't want it to come off in a way that was like, oh yeah, we want to, just make money off the podcast and all this stuff, as business owners and everything, we want to acquire patients. And, I've got Dr. Kathy who's seeing patients and doing a great job here. And so we just have more of a demand, for two schedules to keep full at this point too. And so, not gonna lie, I mean, that is part of it. Nobody does things because they just, out of the goodness of their heart. Of course, we have the proper intentions with our patients and really want to help them, but of course, we want to make a living with things and do well for our families so that way we can provide and, pay off our student loans that are probably pretty expensive. But
Yeah,
nobody, I mean, I don't know about you, but once your basic needs are met, I really find it difficult to get out of bed to feel really motivated to go to work if there's not some sort of bigger or higher purpose, you know?
absolutely.
And so I'm not entirely sure that I could do something for work if I didn't feel like I was truly helping people, you know? And so the goal that we have moving forward is to continue to use our unique clinical take with both our functional medicine and applied kinesiology knowledge to continue to provide good content, reach more people, go over more topics more in depth, honestly, than we probably did before, because we've been doing this for another 2 years, and beyond just doing it for 2 more years since we started the podcast, we've been completely on our own in our own practices since then. We have had nobody else to bounce ideas off of, and so it's just been learning on our own, figuring things out, working through hard cases on our own, and it's been a really good time to, I guess, sharpen our skills and learn new things about different conditions that we just didn't even think to talk about or try or implement previously with patients. It was things that we had learned about in seminars and heard about, and you name it. And a lot of it, sometimes it's stuff that you just, with the muscle testing, you find that something tests well, and then it knocks it out of the park. You're like, okay, well, everybody else that has that problem, maybe I'll check that next time too. And so just continuing to provide good quality content and engaging podcast episodes to continue the education side of it. But then also, one of the biggest things that we talked about, even beyond that, because I would argue that those points are kind of a given. We wouldn't keep doing this if we didn't want to continue to help people. We didn't want to make something more of this podcast and reach more people to help more people. But another part of it is, you're saying that a lot of, and hopefully this doesn't come off, I think me saying this probably speaks for itself, but hopefully this doesn't come off like we're trying to be show offy or cocky or anything, but we we talked about we don't really do a great job of showcasing any sort of clinical cases that we really knock things out of the park. And I mean, there's so many things where people, they've been everywhere. I've had patients that have come from around the country, around the world to come see me. And, just a couple weeks ago, I had a lady, she drove 3.5 hours here, 3.5 hours back, in the same day. And
That's
in one
common.
visit, something that like she had been all over the place to all these specialists trying to diagnose.
Yeah,
In 2 weeks, 3 weeks, things
yeah,
were virtually gone.
that's
There
amazing.
are times like that where I don't know about you, Dr. Joel, but I even still surprise myself where it never really gets old when you have somebody come back and they're like, that last visit was life changing. I literally went from having this crippling problem, all this pain, all these problems with my health or my gut, and all of a sudden, I took whatever, weird things you gave me and, did what you told me, and poof, my life has literally changed in just a matter of weeks. And I can't imagine going back to what it was. And so it really is really awesome stuff. But I think that talking more about these weird, I don't even want to call them weird cases. A lot of times it is things that we see pretty often, but to the listener and to people that are walking through, their own life with these problems, they're not immersed in it every day. And so it very well could be weird problems to them. Although we see it a whole lot, it could be very, very unique and something that nobody that they know has heard of. But that's why I feel like if we talk about a lot more of those things and maybe gear more episodes towards clinical cases that even if, conditions themselves might be very similar, outcomes can be a little different, but also the path forward to fix problems can be a whole lot different. And so providing, I guess, different perspectives on, although you might have, X condition, there's a bunch of different avenues that we can go. But with this patient, we had to work through this, but then they had some of this, and then they had some of this. But at the end of the day, they got better, and it was a great success story. And I think that talking more about those would be really great to not only, just express what we've been doing work-wise here in the office, but also provide hope for people that are dealing with a lot of stuff that's really, really cumbersome on their health and their morale, their happiness, all those things, and hopefully get them to find somebody where they're located to help them out with it, and hopefully help them find somebody good, or, have them come see us and we can hopefully help them out the same way.
Yeah,
What about you, Dr.
totally.
Joel? I know that's probably the big things that we talked about, but what is there anything else that you would contribute?
Yeah, I think for just to touch on that last piece, just we, I think I've kind of mentioned this, but I think we kind of reflecting back on things, I think we really kind of do a little bit of a disservice to all of our listeners by not sharing more testimonials in cases that we see in the practice, because there's a power in storytelling. There's hope in testimonies and testifying to good things. And so that's one thing I think that we can do a little bit better. And I think we will do a little bit better of not just talking about different, you know, um, you know, conditions and diseases and things like that, but talking about how we've seen these things and not necessarily just how to fix it and go about it, which is helpful for people, but to share what that looked like in different patients' lives that we have seen. I think that can be extremely powerful. I think we live in a world where on social media, there's a lot of talk, if you will. Like you kind of mentioned, a lot of influencers that maybe aren't seeing patients as much. But I think when we can go not based off of what we think works or what we think helps patients or what we think causes issues with patients, but we can actually testify like, no, this is what they came in with. This is what their lab showed. This is what the MRI showed. We found this, this, and this. We addressed it this way based on what we found with the muscle testing. And this is what happened. I think that's powerful. And I think that's something I would like for us to do better. And I think that we will. Otherwise, I'm just excited for this podcast to just get better. There's a number of ways we need to level it up, and part of that is our quality, right? So we got, if anybody's listening, if you like to watch it in the Spotify app, or maybe if you're on YouTube, our camera quality is amazing today. We've updated our cameras and so forth. I can actually see Dr. Tim. He looks a lot better when he's not all
Yeah.
pixelated.
I'm
So
surprised you didn't say it look worse. Like, those pixels did you some
like,
justice.
Dr. Tim, is that you? Oh man,
Yeah.
no.
Who's that?
Oh,
Who's that fox over there?
I know. But we're excited for that, for things to just be a little bit better. And one of the things too, Dr. Tim, that I think we can do a little bit better as well, and I'm excited for this, is to just be more interactive with our listeners and get more feedback, right? So we post on social media occasionally. You post way better than I do. I need to pick that up a little bit, but
I've got help.
getting yeah, yeah. But basically getting feedback from our listeners of like, hey, how can we serve y'all? What can we do? What can we talk about? And what would be helpful? We get that indirectly through patients that come in the office that are like, yeah, I listened to that one episode on depression and that was super helpful. It confirmed everything that I thought was true, that your body can heal itself, that it does come from the gut, all the things. And we hear that all the time from about different episodes and all kinds of different scenarios. But I think we could probably do a little bit better job with that, and so I'm excited for that. We also had, on our first couple of years here, we've had, maybe 3 or 4 or 5, maybe 6 different kind of guests on the episodes, kind of sprinkled throughout. And I think those have actually probably been some of the most enjoyable episodes, just because we get to kind of pick other people's brains and hear other different stories and testimonies and expertises, if that's a word, and stuff like that. So I'm excited.
Expertises.
Expertises. And so I'm excited for having some different guests on as well, and I'm
Yeah.
excited for what that looks like, because I think that's only going to get more and more exciting as we go.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Because I mean, we have our perspective. We have, I mean, virtually identical training. And so getting people on the show that have just done different things, have different experience, maybe different credentials. I mean, it's like when we had Brooke on here. Brooke is the nurse practitioner that took over Dr. Joel's office in Kansas. And to hear her perspective on going from being totally medically oriented and totally, rejecting the holistic side, being taught that it was just, foo-foo witch doctor, voodoo magic stuff,
Yeah.
to now she's doing that herself and providing awesome quality care and actually fixing problems. That kind of stuff to me is just incredible. I just had, a patient the other day that was talking about, he just loves listening to these podcasts of pharmaceutical reps turned holistic because
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, my life was, pushing all these medications and, they were making like $1 million a year. And so it's, what's the price point to push those medications? And I would say if you're making $1 million a year, it's probably pretty difficult not to, but they've, had a change of heart and are now doing this. And I think there's a lot of people in what we do that have stories like that where they're like, I was so sickened by what I was doing and trained to do and just told to turn the cheek. And then I, came to being, holistic and natural and things are doing great and I'm helping patients actually fix problems now. And it's just a great thing. So I think having more people on that are like that too would be really great because there's so many different, I think, avenues where there's things that happen behind the scenes in the medical side of things, that patients just don't really hear about. And so there's so many people that come on out and will talk about those things. And I think providing a voice for that is really, really, really great.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. All right, Dr. Tim, let's wrap up. Any last thoughts here on just reflecting, looking into the future for the Freedom to Flourish podcast? Any other thoughts just that you want to share here?
Just as a whole, thank you guys so much for sticking with us as
Yeah.
time has gone on.
Yep.
It's been a long 2 years, but it's also been probably absolutely the quickest 2 years of my entire life. I feel like we just started doing this, and then we think back and we're like, man, it just feels like so long ago, but it just feels so normal now. But really, can't thank all you guys enough for continuing to support us with this, continuing to find benefit in it, and keeping us motivated to keep going and also helping motivate us again to continue producing good content, modifying things, making things better, and just continuing to do what we enjoy doing and helping people. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Likewise, I just did all the thank y'all. Thank y'all for your support. Thanks for your input. Thanks for taking the time to listen. Of course, we hope that all of these episodes are helpful for you. And that's our goal and that's our aim. So, like
Yeah.
always, if there's anything we can do to help you, reach out to us. For me, my name again, Dr. Joel Miller. The practice here is in Flower Mound, Texas, in the DFW area. The practice is called Freedom Health and Wellness. You can find me online at drjoelmiller.com. You can reach our office. The phone number is on the website, but it's 214-717-2728 if you need it. You can find me online on Instagram as well. But yeah, if you guys need anything, if you guys have any questions, need any help, feel free to reach out. And yeah, I hope these episodes are helpful for you. And we're excited to bring you some more.
Yeah. And I'm Dr. Tim Augustiniak here in Bentonville, Arkansas at Flourish Functional Wellness Center. If you guys need anything, have any questions, comments, concerns, or suggestions for future episodes, feel free to reach out. If not, we will see you guys in the next one.